And the sense drenching that you talked about. Oh, and the experience sharing. Like, my nephews are pretty young, and sometimes I just watch them, like, blow a bubble. Ridiculousness. It's just pure joy and exploration. Like, no one can blow a bubble like bubbles like little kids can. It's just the act of blowing the bubble, seeing the bubble, and then, like, being surprised when it pops. It's just the whole experience, you know?
That is a very pretty visual, especially just, like, acknowledging, like, the joy in the little kid's face, and then the grabbing up to try and reach it, and then bloop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's gone.
I have, one of my neighbors has young children, and I actually remember or recall watching them chase a butterfly. And what I thought about was the kids chased the butterfly without any sort of, I don't think they really believed they were going to catch it, kind of thing. You know, they're just moving towards it joyfully, gleefully, like, oh my God, it's a butterfly.
The little kid does or exudes when they're chasing it. You know, there's no distraction, but it's this light, this light focus, you know, just the ease of it. Whereas, yeah, there's always some kind of distraction or some kind of motivation attached
To an adult doing it.
To an adult. I definitely think, you know, the path of delight that I'm acknowledging more is just the idea of nature for me. I didn't realize how important it was for me to be in nature, and it's just so much easier for me to kind of connect to this idea of wordlessness in nature, because I think there are so many. It's always fun for me to kind of play, you know, the board game, The Game of Life?
Yeah, I don't think I've played it before, though.
Well, I always kind of, you know, you pick a person, and then you pick your job, and then all of these different things. But it's kind of like you can kind of, I don't even want to say it this way, because I feel like it's taboo almost. But it's that idea of, like, when I'm in nature, it's like, I feel like our world can be, you know how you can stack, like, styrofoam cups one on each other, and then they get really far apart, you know, really tall, whatever. That's how I feel like I am in nature, in the sense, like, if I just sit and watch, like, little ants build their little hill, you know, it's like you are looking at them from this bigger, larger universe. And it's so fun to play that, like, exponentially. And that, like, idea of delight is so easy for me to connect to now that I, like, realize what it does to me. You know, before I was like, go outside, it's hot. Like, no, I don't want to go outside. But it's like, what am I going to do outside? You know, all of these different, like, excuses. But now it's like, I can just go sit out there and, like, stare at the ground and be amazed.
Yes. There's this really interesting, neat, wonderful, amazing thing that I learned called sit spot. Michael Trotta does it. And, well, he doesn't do it, but he teaches it. I'm sure he does it too. But they teach it, and I experienced it through one of his courses. And I actually would sit in the mornings and literally be amazed at the world that was happening in the grass. Like the dew that was on each blade, and the spider webs that were between the blades, and it was like another world. And then just looking at it across, you know, these diamonds, you know, they were just sparkling in as the light would come up. But I think you're onto something with nature. I think it's something our society doesn't do enough of, and that's allow it to heal us, allow it to restore us, to bring us back into harmony.
The birds agree with you.
Don't they? This big boy microphone's doing his job. So I was taking a walk one day, and this is a few years ago when I was on my quest for true love, or what love is in truth, and just this idea of dissecting it like an animal and then understanding it. And a really amazing thing happened. And it's a path that I would take almost daily. And I asked nature, I said, where is love? Like, where is it? You know, like, you want to find
Show
it.
me.
Show me love. And as I looked, I don't know if it was there already and I never found it again, but the trees created this heart in their, it was like their branches were just cradled over each other, where it was this opening through trees that was just this big heart. And I was like, wow. How'd you do that? That was cool. And then when I would take that walk again, I never saw that heart. But what I took from that experience is that love is everywhere when you look for it. So it's everywhere. It's there already. You just aren't seeing it. Like you said in the very beginning, you have to be awake to it.
Yeah, and it's as simple as that idea of you go car shopping and, oh, I want to buy a Camry. Then the next day you see 50,000 Camrys driving around.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that idea of focus.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Of training our awareness. And that's the shift that's happened for me over the last few years is this increase in choice, this response to things and life rather than reaction, just like that green gooiness that fell from this stranger tree, and an increase in my awareness. I mean, those two things in and of themselves completely changed my life without anything in my life changing.
Right, and it's those experiences that kind of pull you into wordlessness.
Mm-hmm. Like being drawn into it, right? Mm-hmm. Like a magnet.
Mm-hmm.
Like the flower opening, it's pulled opening. Like it's just relaxing into it. That's pretty cool.
It's the flow.
Oh. Whew.
And, this idea, it's simple, but it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of power behind it that I'm slowly beginning to recognize.
Well, in beauty. Well, and I think that the idea of power is I don't even know how to describe it, but there's no force. There's no push. It's just this energy, right? It's just this innate potential power kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the potential. That's the power.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I'm just kind of giddy right now.
Because it's kind of cool, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's so
It's like
cool.
creepy cool.
Creepy cool. Uh-oh. Another creepy cool. So you want to
Hmm.
tell everyone what creepy cool is? Because it's an inside joke, kind of.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, so it was one of our first conversations that we had together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I started out telling you one of my situations where it was a crappy situation. It started out really crappy. I don't even know. Do you remember what we were talking about? Yeah, that doesn't matter, I guess. And so I was just feeling, everyone can relate to feeling crappy,
Right?
like
Yeah.
something just, it wasn't right. And so, I talked about it. You worked your magic. And at the end, what happened?
I think it just wiggled a little. Like,
Yeah, it was just kind of throughout the process, some stardust was sprinkled, and it went from like crappy to like woo, kind of like what the woo woo stuff going on, and all of a sudden I was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, that's so creepy, but not a scary creepy, like this awesome kind of like, what was that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's our
so it goes from
creepy.
crappy to creepy,
Creepy.
creepy cool. Yeah,
That's what happens. Cool.
very cool.
Um, do you want to say bye for now?
Yeah, I think so. We'll talk about the cones later, or when do we want to do?
Cones?
Well, it's just the paradox and stuff.
Well, tell me about it.
Do you want to talk about that?
We can talk about that. Paradox is cool.
Paradox scares me.
Really? Why?
The idea of it is kind of, it's uncomforting in a way.
I'm turning the page to paradox.
I think it's on page 44. When I was reading through the list of like questions you can kind of ask yourself into wordlessness, it's unnerving to me because my mind is so used to spinning and going and fixing and analyzing, and you can always work your way into another story or into another situation of how to fix it or what you should do next and whatnot. And so my mind is so used to that. And throughout practices and stuff, you can distance yourself from it, but it still happens. That's what I'm used to anyway. And so I don't have the one highlighted that I read.
Well, what I'm reading is so she talks about she doesn't talk. She writes on the words of mystical wayfinders like Lao Tzu, who says, "The path into the light seems dark. The path forward seems to go back. The direct path seems long. The greatest love seems indifferent. The greatest wisdom seems childish." And then of God in the Old Testament being the still voice.
Oh, I have that underlined, yep.
And St. Paul saying, "When I am weak, then I am strong." So there's this paradox. I guess what's coming to me is this still voice. Like the silence isn't really silent in wordlessness. There is still noise. And the idea of not putting forth effort and having so much power is paradox. And it's paradox only because of society and how we've been trained.
Yeah, and it's this idea of paradox, I guess I should rephrase. Because this I'm used to, if you will. Like this, it sits well because turning it around back and forth, you can kind of begin to grasp it if you allow yourself. But I think it's the koans that kind of, like, for example, on page 44, it says, a man is hanging by his teeth from a tree on a cliff. Someone asks him a question. If he doesn't answer, he falls and dies. If he does answer, he falls and dies. What should he do? Like that, for me, is a completely different realm. Because what happens to me, and I was trying to like grasp, like, how can I connect my experience to this? And so, have you ever been scuba diving?
No.
Okay. Well, that's on your to-do list now.
But no.
Okay. So when I got scuba
snorkeling,
certified,
yes, not scuba diving.
Oh my gosh, this was probably one of my more like, I don't know, it was an amazing experience for so many reasons. But in terms of these koans, to stay on track, like, I remember I got certified, and then we did like our open water dive in the ocean. And I remember first, like, you know, there's so many stories I could talk about this because the whole experience was such an experience for me. But I remember at one point, you know, I had, I don't know what you call it. I don't even know. The mask or the helmet or the globe that you're in.
The life source of air.
Right. And I was kind of fluttering above a reef and just watching all of the different schools of fish and the different colors kind of doing their thing, going in and out of their homes, and just watching kind of the underwater world. And I was so entrenched in that. And I was just kind of lightly like pulled along by the current. And I remember noticing the reef kind of getting smaller and the activity lessening a bit. And then I looked forward, and it was like the end of the ocean. Like the reef stopped, and I looked, and all I saw was this expansive, deep, dark blue. And it scared the bejesus out of me. Like, it was the most amazing, like it was that breathless, speechless, like, I don't know what to do right now. It was like I was kind of like I almost freaked because it was so scary to me. Like, I'm in this current, and oh my God, I don't know, like, if I decide to go, like, let the current pull me, like, I don't know where the hell I'm going, and it looks really scary. And that's kind of what this koan does to me, because my mind, like, instead of like fixing and, oh, I can relate to that and understand it, like, it goes like blank to me. And that's what's scary about it. I mean, the deep, dark, expansive blue ocean is scary.
So what did you do in that situation?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I didn't go into it. I remember, you know, like, there were 3 other people with me. 4 other people with me. And so I'm sure I kind of just went back. There was no way in hell I was going to the deep, dark ocean. I mean, come on, I'm only certified for 25 feet. You know, but it was also the idea now, like, reflecting back on it, you know, there's so much awesomeness to that. It doesn't have to be scary.
Right.
Initially it is, because it's unknown and unfamiliar.
I think that's the path of paradox. It doesn't have to be scary. So with the one that you read out loud, what should he do? He shouldn't do anything. Like, he's literally hanging by his teeth. He just falls. And maybe there's something that catches him.
Or it's that also the idea of be versus do. Like you said.
Yeah.
He can be in the moment.
Yeah. So the other thing about that is that gives you an either or. I've come to believe through experience that we don't have to choose either or. And this, what comes to mind for me is it's some scientific breakthrough that happened somewhere fancy in some college experiment or university experiment. And so they're looking at the protons and neutrons of the nucleus. I mean, in that smallest particle. And what they realized is that in the past we thought it moved around inside, but it actually doesn't. It disappears and reappears, disappears and reappears. The only time it chooses a path, or that you can see it go from one place to another, is when it is watched, when it is being watched. Then it picks. So in this moment, let's just make up a number. There could be 30,000 potentials from it. And our mind naturally says either or. Yes or no. Instead of yes and. That's how I think, from your story to here, is the path of paradox. Is that we think that there is a boundary or a best choice, right? The right thing. But there's everything. And it's like a GPS. It continuously just reworks itself to its bestest. Like, okay, you took that road. Okay, let's bestest here and blah, blah, blah. Right? This is summer, and I've had in my mind and my heart a lot of people moving into a transition, having to make a decision, right, into their next thing. Okay, so I sort of lost where I was going, but that just means something else is coming up. So that's kind of scary, but in reality, we all know our destination. We all know that sort of end of the GPS, and that's death. Like, every human being will die. So if that's our destination, between here and there, we're just GPSing to our best death by living in this moment with what's happening right now. And then that creates and expands into the best potential and the bigger potential and the bigger one and the bigger one. Instead of limiting ourselves and limiting ourselves and limiting ourselves to a single choice all the time.
Well, right, and that is also connected to the idea that everything is data.
Mm-hmm. There is no
everything gives you information to help you get to where you want.
Mm-hmm. Everything, our emotions, our sensations, everything is data. And for me, the wayfinder, the healer in this wild new world, is decoding that data to find their language.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a language, and now we're hunting for the meaning of our own language. You smiled.
Yeah, the loon cooed right when you finished. Perfect timing.
Oh. Is that... I might have gotten away from the book, but is that paradox? No, you were talking about the cones.
Yeah, it's just that idea of playfulness, like playing with these ideas that we're not familiar with, like giving ourselves space to question and consider other options.
Mm-hmm. Like, the neat one is, it's not necessary for speech to come from the tongue. That, for me, is so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some cones are easier depending on our experience.
I just read this, and I think it's I just want to read it out loud, considering what you had talked about in terms of like everyone's GPS is ultimately death. This is from page 48. She said, or she's quoting someone else, and she said, "Death is stripping away of all that is not you. The secret of life is to die before you die, and find that there is no death." And I think that's associated with this idea of change. You know, there are many deaths all throughout our life. And ultimately stripping yourself of that ego, of stuff that doesn't belong to you, not your business, so that you can live in your right life is what it's all about.
Yeah, because death isn't what's scary. Not living is what's scary. And for me, in my most recent quest, it was this quest for finding the truth of love. Because what I found as I studied the sages and the mystics and the teachers over thousands of years, like everyone agrees that love is the ultimate truth, and there's just this mystery around it. And my mind wanted to attach it to an emotion or an experience between people. And I thought that if I could capture it, like understand it, then I would be closer to, I don't know what I was trying to get closer to, but just the idea of truth and reality, of something that is real. And it broke apart, and love was no longer, I call it love 2.0, because it was no longer this mystery that I didn't know, because it was something that I experienced all the time. It was just the fact that I was trying to reach for it and hold on to it, when it is. So you look for something expecting or wanting to uncover a thing, and then find that there's something else there instead, as a paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make sense? It didn't make sense to me as I was saying
Well,
it.
I was following it. And I get what you're saying, and that sometimes the paradox in itself is that you're searching for something, but in the end you get something different, which is what you wanted originally.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand that flip. Yeah.
It's all just so interesting, isn't it? What?
I just think, what do you think the birds are saying right now? Look at these two chicks talking about paradox, you know?
Right? Well, I think we bring up a point. Like, you think that the birds are interested in us, and they're not. Right? They're just living their own experience. Like, a bird doesn't sing to be heard. A bird sings because it's supposed to sing. We are the ones that attach that kind of meaning to it. And here's this might not even make sense, but the idea for me of wordlessness is when I'm no longer separated from that bird. And there were moments when I was in sit spot where things would come close and far away without moving. So
I think that's also the trickiness of kind of knowing what wordlessness is in comparison or in relationship to oneness.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
You know, 'cause there's that whole other aspect. And like you said, it doesn't have to be either or. It can be this and, but, you
So
know, where are the spectrums?
have we jumped from wordlessness to oneness
I think we're starting to go there.
naturally?
Naturally. It's blossoming into oneness now.
It's blossoming into onenessness. Okay, well, on that note, we'll wrap this puppy up.
Yeah.